How do you lead 40,000 young people across 120 countries as a self-described 97% introvert? By realizing introversion is your superpower. Today's guest is the former global president of youth organization AIESEC, author of Grayscale, a memoir of an introverted leader, host of the On Becoming podcast, and a coach who believes empathy isn't a soft skill. It's the whole point of leadership. We're talking about owning who you are, how lessons from online gaming shaped this global leader, and what it really takes to make the leap from employee to entrepreneur. Welcome to the Unemployment Diaries, Mohamed Fadel. So you have a podcast now, but you didn't start as a podcaster. And in fact, I read parts of your memoir, Grayscale. And it sounds like you had a very different relationship with being public in the first place, to the point of having a very physical reaction that you would stutter or shake if you needed to be in the spotlight. Like, how did you go from that as a starting point to now very intentionally putting yourself in the public eye?
Whenever someone tells me that they've read my book, I feel like I'm on display. I just feel naked. I think when I was publishing my book at that time, and I knew there were a couple hundred people reading it, that was like, yeah, it was very tough. Because I think deep down, I still feel very self-conscious when I feel like I'm on display. But I think being on display or putting yourself out there is just like anything else. It's something that the more you do, the more you sort of desensitize yourself towards it. That it becomes normal. It's like a muscle that you're practicing. And I think, just like you mentioned, I mean, I'm as introverted as they get. Like on the MBTI scale, I'm like 97% introverted. So I'm like an entire extreme of it. And I think back then I didn't really fully get it. Back then I was also like, I was that introverted person, but I was extremely shy. I was extremely reserved. And I think we often, till today, I think a lot of people confuse introversion with shyness or being just sort of taking a side. We don't understand the difference between it and understand that introversion is more of the energy gain and loss kind of thing. And I think being put in places at that young age, back then I wasn't really, sort of wasn't pushing back. I wasn't trying to get out of it, because I was just comfortable in it because I just like I always say, I used to live in a computer screen and that was my life. And then when I sort of got pushed outside of that, when I went to university and I started engaging with people and trying things out, I realized, oh, there's a lot more to life than that, right? And sort of got bit by bit out of it. So podcasting is definitely different, but it's I can't tell yet if you're an introvert or extrovert. I haven't really realized it. But you realize with introverts, I mean, you do value and cherish one-to-one conversations. I mean, that's where you feel like you can flourish and thrive. And podcasting is just that. It's literally one-to-one conversations where you can feel very comfortable with the person in front of you. So it's been enjoyable, to be honest. And also, I don't have to do most of the talking when I'm podcasting. I just like sit there, yeah, and listen essentially, which is fun, right?
I never thought of that. I never thought of the fact that a podcast, even though it's something that's public because other people can listen to it or watch it, is kind of an intimate conversation, and it is a
Yeah.
small group setting or a one-to-one setting. That's it kind of blowing my mind a little bit because I am extroverted in a way, but also super introverted. For example, I prefer smaller group gatherings
Mhm.
where we can talk and we can really get into it. And large group settings to me can get a little overwhelming or just boring. Like I'll find a group to be with in the large setting.
Likewise.
Um, the psychoanalysis that comes out of these conversations. So you talked about having a background in computer science and studying that in university and little by little kind of opening up to this other world. Did you consciously at any point decide, like, I would like to go beyond being behind the screen to maybe being in front of it? Because you did lead a large youth organization. That's a very public role. Is that something that just happened? Or do you think you chose it?
Good one. So technically, I'm a computer scientist, but I always say I can't code to save my life. So if you depend on me to like build your app, it's definitely going to crash. Like I mean, I always say like we have 99.9% uptime. It's going to be like 99.9% downtime. So I'm not your go-to guy when it comes to computer science. But yeah, I'm a trained computer scientist technically.
I mean, there's vibe coding now, so.
Yeah, which is great. I've been taking a lot of advantage of it, which is amazing. But I think when I got into uni, I was engineering. I was still in my first year, and at that point, I was still that shy, reserved fellow. And I got introduced to extracurricular activities at that point. And I remember my first thing was Model United Nations, MUN, and that was like sort of like a sneak peek into just being more around people and like engaging in external things. And then that's when I came across that other organization, which was AIESEC. And I think what I loved about it was that they just sort of they throw you in the deep end and they just tell you to figure it out. And they also trust you. I think that's a beautiful thing when you think of wanting someone to develop. I mean, the best way to develop and to grow is through practical experiences, right? And I think that's what I got is that people just trusted me. They gave me a position that I by no means felt nor was, um, let's say, worthy of, in my opinion, at that time as well, because I was just like fresh off of high school, barely had any knowledge or experience or did anything with my life other than like achieve quite a lot of accolades in my online games. So I had no right or I had no right to lead the team. Like, and they gave me a team of like 4 to 5 people. I was like, huh? How do you lead people? How do you manage people? Like, why should they listen to you and all that? And bit by bit, that just like sort of kind of grew in me that desire to want to be more because I always like to reflect on why I fell in with online gaming the way I did was because online gaming gave me certain things that I couldn't find in real life. Like it gave me community, which were like the people and the friends that I had in the game. Because I used to log on to the game because I want to meet my friends. I want to talk to them because we used to chat in game. Because back then we didn't really have WhatsApp and stuff like so. Like in-game chatting was the
Yeah.
real thing. Um, it gave me a sense of purpose because I was growing in game and I always felt like I need to achieve things in the game for the sake of the faction or the guild or like the group of people that I like associated myself with, which was my community in game also. It gave me a sense of progression because I could always sort of level up, right? And I could always like become better and get more skill points and get more higher equipment and gear and stuff like that, which was something I could strive for, right? I didn't have that in real life. So I think what happened when I tried the extracurriculars, it sort of switched the narrative from like seeking those things from inside a computer screen in a virtual world where it actually does not amount to anything to running after those things in real life. So I was like, those triggers were still there. Like my receptors were still just like firing on all fronts with regards to like, I need to get that next position. I need to like level up. There's a higher position. So right now a team leader, then I want to become a vice president. I want to on a local level and stuff like that also. Like, but I just wanted to grow. And then I could also see my personal progression in terms of like, oh, I couldn't speak in front of people, but now I spoke in front of 3 people. Now I'm going to speak in front of 10. Now I'm going to have to speak in front of 100. So you could also see like those elements of progression that I was finding in games. So I needed them. Like I believe every human needs them. I was finding them elsewhere, and I just switched them with a real world like I mean, you know the terminology like IRL, so like in real life. So like I finally found them IRL in real life. And to me, I think that's what made uh, working in those organizations and everything feel very personal because it just made me who I was. I mean, it transformed me entirely. I mean, I probably not probably I would definitely not be speaking to you right now if not for it. So
You kind of described the three pillars that I think from a psychological, sociological perspective, everyone describes as key to the human experience, like community,
mhm.
society, like where your place is in the world, a sense of purpose, and then the need for progression. So it's interesting that you found that in gaming. You recognize that those were elements that you had there, but there's something that pulled you in the IRL world more than gaming. Do you still game? Is that still interesting to you, or has the IRL version taken over?
I mean, I still love gaming, but I don't do it as frequently. Like sometimes also with gaming, like I have friends who live abroad, so like ones who live in Europe or live in Asia or whatnot. And we could get online and game and just to speak while we're gaming and everything, and we're just playing together. But I feel connected to my friend, so I still enjoy gaming. But when you think of it, like there's a reframing to it. Like I'm enjoying it with friends that I have in real life that I want to connect with, also whether like they're not in the same country or they're just sitting right next to me. So yeah, that's a good reflection.
You worked with a lot of young leaders with AIESEC. In one sentence, can you remind me what they do?
They're they're a youth organization which is essentially focused on leadership development in young people, and they do that through exchange programs, so like sending people abroad and whatnot.
What even is a leader? Like, who can be a leader?
I mean, have you ever watched the movie Ratatouille?
I've seen parts of it. It's the rat in
There,
the
the rat
restaurants
who
in Paris.
cooks. Yeah. So there was a book, and there was like this big chef, and he'd always say like anybody could cook, right? And that was referring to like even a rat could cook. And my belief definitely is not the same thing in terms of cooking, but my belief in terms of leadership is that anyone can lead. But there are a few caveats there. It's like anyone can lead as long as you're willing to do the work that's required to learn, as long as you're willing to actually fully understand themselves and invest in understanding themselves. Anyone can lead as long as they're, well, willing to be human with their people and with themselves. So being honest, being human, being just real with what the world requires. I don't think leadership is a skill for the select few. I think anyone can do it. It's just a lot of us choose not to. And I think that's the big problem.
I mean, the qualities that you just described, understanding yourselves, being willing to be human with yourself and with others, and a willingness to learn are probably
Uh,
not what people think of when they think of leaders in a more traditional sense. Like you described very human aspects to leadership. Why is, for example, understanding yourself important to be a good leader?
as a leader or as a manager, you're expected to understand others, right? That's, I mean, you're leading a person, or you're leading 10 or even 100 or 1,000. I mean, definitely you're not directly leading 1,000, but if you're leading anybody, empathy is a big deal in leadership, right? I mean, for you to lead right, you need to be able to put yourself in that person's shoe. You need to be able to understand what they're going through. You need to be able to understand the reality. I need to be able to understand how their response is to certain triggers as well. And by understanding them, you're going to be able to understand how they're going to react. And when you understand how they're going to react, you're going to understand how to support them better, or how to sort of, as a leader, take certain hits to protect them as well. Because I mean, that's part of leadership also. And if you're expected to do that for others, how can you do it for them when you can't even do it for yourself? How can you essentially help them grow if you don't know what you need to grow? How do you help them counter certain challenges that they're going to face, and like moments where they're going to break apart if you yourself have not figured that out for yourself? It doesn't mean that you have to have everything figured out for yourself, but as long as you're in the process of understanding and you're constantly acknowledging that I'm not perfect, I'm imperfect because I'm human. I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to learn from them. And along the journey, I'm going to understand myself better. I think that's what you need. And the more you understand yourself better, the more you essentially are capable of helping others grow. Because I mean, there's a statement. I don't know if it's a quote or not, but I mean, you can't ever take people to where you have not been yourself, right? So if you expect people to learn about themselves and seek their own development and their own growth, well, if they don't see you doing it for yourself, if you haven't done it for yourself, why would they?
It's like telling someone to quit smoking while you are
You're
still at
holding a
a pack a
cigarette.
day.
Yeah.
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 It's like, do as I say, not as I do. It's funny. It reminds me, I was in a leadership training once, and we were paired with
Mhm.
leaders from across the organization. I had never met this woman. We had to ask each other questions. The question was, what do you think is the key quality for good leadership? And my answer was empathy. And she looked at me like I had three heads. And she was like, what does that have to do with leadership? And don't you think that if you're too empathetic with the people that you lead, that it could make you make bad decisions because you might get too invested in their personal story. And as a result, you're making personal decisions as opposed to what's best for the company or what's best for the team. And I I hadn't thought of that perspective before. I had never thought like, oh, well, what if I made a bad decision because I know that my coworker is I don't know, having a hard time and they
Yeah.
recently went through a divorce and they lost their home, and then I'm going to cut them slack. In my mind, it's allocation of resources that's more effective. So if I know that someone is struggling, then I might be able to manage and redistribute across the team while having individual discussions with this person to see how best to support them. Like, that was my perspective, but
Right.
interesting to see that it's not everyone's perspective.
I mean, when it comes to leadership and like even in my coaching, like one thing I always say is like when you're leading someone and both you and the person you're leading need to be all in. When it comes to leadership and when it comes to being in a team and being in even in a relationship, I mean, all in means everything is on the table. So both personal and professional needs to be on the table because the reality is professional life affects your personal life, right? When something happens bad at work, you go back home and you're frustrated, you're pissed off, it affects your day. But we expect that, and we know that this is normal, and we expect that to happen. However, we judge people when their personal life affects their professional one. So isn't that sort of contradictory? If this affects the other, then the others are going to affect this, then we need to treat them both the same way. We need to give people the let's say the benefit of the doubt, but more of we need to give people the comfort of knowing that we understand that life gets in the way sometimes. We understand that work gets in the way sometimes, but we're going to be empathetic enough, which is the whole point of empathy, to understand. We're going to be empathetic and we're going to show empathy when things happen at home that are affecting your work, just like I know that things at work are going to affect things at your home. So you can separate the two. A lot of people say like, that this person is like bringing their personal life to work and this is very unprofessional. No, it's not. I need to, like, I mean, when something goes wrong with a team member, the first question, like when they don't deliver a task or anything, the first question should never be have why haven't you delivered? Where is this thing? Hasn't the deadline wasn't the deadline yesterday? First question is always how are you? Like what's happening in your life? What's
Mhm.
going on? And when you reframe it that way, then you get to understand what's happening behind the scenes, and then you're able to, well, either support them or then make a completely different decision that's going to build trust in your team member because they know that you have their backs. So then later on, they're going to over deliver and overperform because they know that their leader is not going to at their first misstep, they're not going to essentially just like throw them under the bus because they're there for them. And taking out the personal aspect in the work life just completely negates that. Does not allow for it.
You sound like you're speaking from experience. Have you been in a situation where someone hasn't treated you the way that you would have expected?
Mm. This is called the unemployment diaries, right? So like earlier in 2024, like as I mentioned before, like I was also laid off along with like 70% or more of a company that I was part of. And I think the harsh thing is that company was based in Dubai. And the thing is, like a lot of people literally like appended their entire lives and just moved continents entirely just to move for that to that company. And the sad reality is that a couple of weeks later, they were just laid off with no assurances, with nothing, and people didn't think of their personal life at that case. A lot of them moved with their families, with like multiple kids, or they left their families behind, and it's not an easy move. And when you think of it, that's the cost of business, right? That's like essentially capitalism, and it's fine, and it's normal, and we expect that. But we never look at the stories of the people who actually get hurt in the process, and you're not considering how people really could go through a whole lot of hell because of a decision a company makes because they're not even looking at their personal lives. I know that's a bigger thing in question because layoffs happen all the time. Um, but I mean, imagine a world where people actually take into consideration those aspects before making a decision to lay off people. And I think that world will change because you wouldn't hire those people in the first place because if you plan correctly and you know that this is exactly what I need, that I wouldn't overhire because I know that then laying off is not as easy as it would be. So I'd be very careful at the start. So I'd actually take care of people. So it's more preemptive. So yeah, I didn't hire that person, but then that person stayed at their job and they were unhurt. not following a dream of coming to your company or to your place just to be laid off a couple of weeks or a couple of months or even a couple of years later. So I think if human emotions, human lives are taken more into consideration, things would change entirely in the business world, but they're not. And we're not all in. We're all about professional. We're all about keeping the balance sheet positive. It's inhumane, but that's a reality, which is a bit sad.
I mean, that's the whole premise of capitalism, right? Like cheap
Yeah.
resources, cheap labor enable outsized or more profits.
But then that's where Gen Z comes in. I mean, with Gen Z and not only Gen Z, but like more of the approach of having sort of more of an entrepreneurial mindset and building your own things and trying to create your own opportunities also. I think that's where people would be able to sort of overcome this, but I think that just requires a lot more um, change in mindset and willingness to do things differently. And with that, like I think that would enable a lot of people to combat that wave of layoffs that is going to come over the next 5 years. And we're seeing a lot of it. We met off of Substack, right? And a lot of people are building on Substack because they're hoping to start building their own different careers and building their own thing and like starting to monetize their own talents and whatnot. I've seen people who are like of all sorts of ages and like they're starting from scratch there and they're ambitious, they're dreaming big, and I think that's great, honestly. Like that's proof that yeah, it's gonna happen, but people will find ways to overcome it.
We I think it was my first episode with Chris Kalabukis, and he talked about the same thing, about how the opportunities for individuals to do things for themselves is starting, and platforms like Substack provide that opportunity, but there needs to be a cultural mind shift around how it's perceived so that it's given the same value, and that people who are creating content, for example, that content is treated as valuable an asset as stock or as something
Mhm.
that you're creating in a more traditional sense. And I mean, there's also at the individual level, there is a mind shift that needs to happen to be
Mhm.
thinking as an entrepreneur versus thinking as an employee. I know you've worked for companies before and now you're working for yourself. What is the biggest shift you had to make in your own thinking to be a leader for yourself?
I think one misconception about entrepreneurship is that you get a lot more freedom, right? And I think what you realize is with entrepreneurship, it's completely the opposite. I mean, with a full-time job, it's 9 to 5, right? So you work those 8 hours, 9 hours, 10 hours if it's extended, but that's it, right? With entrepreneurship, it's not. I mean, you're always on. You're 24/7. I mean, you have to always be alert. You always have to be doing something. Instead of reporting to one boss, you're reporting to multiple, hundreds even sometimes. So that I like idea or dream of entrepreneurship and that thought that it's going to give you that freedom is not real, because if you're chasing freedom, then probably you most probably will have a lot more freedom in a 9 to 5, right? And I think the difference between the two is that a lot of people are putting in a lot more hours building their own things, but at least they're doing something they love, or they're doing something that they could see sort of like the light at the end of the tunnel for. And yeah, it's going to take multiple years to build. They're working at a fraction of what they were making before, but they're building, creating something they believe in. And I think that's a difference. When you're leading yourself, you don't have that cadence, you don't have that accountability from an external. Same as like when you go to a gym and you just want to coach, or when you're trying to keep up with the diets and you need someone to just like sort of like some kind of slap you on the hand when you like go for that cake or for that pizza. But when building for yourself, I think it's all about, when you're creating yourself, it's all about how much is at stake for you. How important is that item or that thing for you to keep you going when you're not going to want to anymore? Because I think that is the main difference between people who are successful in general in life and people who are just okay at what they do. That's the differentiator, is that those people are going to keep going for years even without seeing results, just seeing snippets or glimmers of hope every now and then. But sometimes it's literally going to take years. And not a lot of people are going to keep going that path or are going to stay at it because it's hard. Entrepreneurship is hard. Creating something for yourself is a lot harder than just depending on someone to pay you a salary and a paycheck at the end of the month. It's a lot more comfortable to get that. But if you believe in yourself enough, if you believe in what you're building enough, it becomes worth it. It makes those extra hours feel okay. They're still tiring, by the way. I'm not saying they're easy. I mean, I personally believe that no one likes going to the gym, but you just go to the gym because you believe that you need to go to a gym. You're going to go day after day after day because you have something in mind that's a big dream and ambition that you're going to create. Same with entrepreneurship. It's not easy, but to some, it's worth it.
Yeah, so it's almost like you have to develop the discipline, but in order to sustain the discipline, you have to have a strong internal motivation to continue. Because otherwise, you will eventually burn out. Because going back to gaming and that 3-part framework you said about what you were getting from gaming, community, purpose, and progression. When you work for a company, that's all given to you. Your community is your colleagues. Your purpose is the company's purpose and your job as part of that. And if the company does a decent job, they explain it to you. And then your progression is the corporate hierarchy, right? You go from specialist to manager to senior manager to VP, et cetera, et cetera. And it's a very clear path with milestones and KPIs and OKRs and all the acronyms that I don't miss at all. But as an entrepreneur, you have to create all of that for yourself, and understanding yourself, to your point, seems like the most important thing to do. How do you, I mean, you describe yourself as an introverted leader. How did you put those two things together? What is an introverted leader? What other types of leaders are there? And how did you figure that all out?
What I've realized is that I've personally done that, but a lot of people use introversion as a crutch. And I think I hate seeing that because I see a lot of people saying, oh, I can't do this because I'm an introvert. I can't speak in front of all those people because I'm an introvert. No one's going to listen to me because like, who's going to listen to an introvert, right? And a lot of people think that, I probably or most definitely cannot lead right now because, well, I don't have the skills because I'm an introvert. It's always appended to whatever they're saying as an excuse, and I think it's just frustrating because it's not in any way laziness from their side. I'd say it's fear. It's fear of other people's perception as well, because people glorify the extroverted leader. What's often glorified because you glorify the loud person, the person who speaks up, person who's just out there, the person who's like who has all that energy and who's sort of exhibiting that and showing it out there. It's on display all the time because they're just visible, right? And people just think that that's how a leader should be. I mean, in reality, when you look at most of the world leaders, and when you look at some of the biggest company leaders as well, like even the FANGs, like when you look at Facebook, look at Meta, you look at Mark Zuckerberg, you look at Steve Jobs, you look at like Bill Gates. I mean, they're introverts, right? And they built the best and biggest companies in the world. And we often forget to see that. And same as like also people who are like 30 something or even 40 something or even 50, and they think that it's too late for them. So they're stuck in that frame that they've settled on in their 20s and that old job that they're unhappy with, but khalas, it's late for them. It's the end of the path. But they also forget to see all those people who started building their lives and like achieved greatness at 50 or 60 something. So I think we tend to get stuck in realities that we've just sort of confined ourselves in. One of those is introversion. Some people paint introversion as or like make introversion a cage or some sort of a prison that they're stuck in, and they live their entire lives in it, by the way, stopping them from achieving a lot of things that they want to. And when you realize that it's literally just a trait as anything else that you have. It's only that. It's nothing more than a trait. And you have a ton of other traits. I mean, I'll give you a very stupid example. And you don't see yourself like confining yourself to I'm not gonna apply to this job because I'm blonde. Or I'm not gonna apply to this job because, well, I'm a bad driver. Like that's stupid as well. Like it's a very stupid example. But like there are a lot of things we possess. There are a lot of things. I mean, because an introvert also can like develop like the ability to be extroverted as well. Just an extrovert who develops the ability to be more introspective and whatnot. So like they're all traits that you can develop and that you can work with, but like people can find themselves into them. And I think that's just a sad reality because a lot of them rule their lives because of it. And they just like lead a life that is unfulfilling because they think they're limited in a way, or they think they're missing something and they're not.
I like the way you frame it as introverted is just a quality.
That I mean, I'm biased because I'm an introvert, but like in my opinion, introversion is a superpower because what I've always noticed, and by the way, that's what worked for me. Um, what helped me get the roles that I was at, like that I was in, the roles of leading an entire organization of 40,000 young people as an introvert was because people didn't know what to expect from me because I was never out there, I was never loud, I was never like, they didn't know me. So when I first presented myself, people were surprised. I was like, "Ooh, look at that guy! Like, look, he can actually speak. He's got some substance. He's got something to tell or to say." An extrovert, I mean, you already know what they're going to say because you've heard it 1,000 times. An introvert, you didn't. You don't know what they're going to say. So once they speak, it gives you sort of like the element of surprise. And I think that's a superpower. Same exactly as like when you're in a meeting and like extroverts are constantly talking, right? They're like interrupting this and like speaking up here and here and here. And the introvert is just like sitting there completely quiet and they don't speak. But the moment that that person opens their mouth, everyone listens, right? Because they're not accustomed to it. And I think that's life. As an introvert, you could essentially use it as a superpower if you decide to. It's extremely powerful, in my opinion.
Completely agree. I think the introverted side is the side that allows you to read the room in a way that an extrovert is, too busy talking, consuming,
Hmm.
controlling to do. And I say this because I'm not sure which camp I fall in either, but there's some plus sides to that, right? If you need to get attention quickly, an extrovert can be useful.
Hmm.
And you need to command a room where there's a lot of competing energies. But the introspection, the innovation, I think often comes from those minds that are able to resist the outside world a little bit and create a container to develop something. So when they speak, people listen.
Yeah. And the another reality is a lot of people also think that certain roles are for certain people. So like for instance, I think the easiest example to mention would be like people assume like if you're to be a salesperson or if you're to work in business development, then you have to be an extrovert because you have to always be dealing with people and networking and whatnot. But I mean, that's not, I mean, yeah, that's a big part of it. But there's a whole other part of sales that can be done not having to be with people. I mean, there's like a lot of work with GTM right now that you can do like behind a computer screen. You could also go do the networking, but you just need bigger breaks afterwards just to sort of regain your energy. But you can be amazing at networking and you can be amazing at selling to clients. You just need to deal with your energy differently. So I think that's another factor as well, like how sometimes people limit themselves to certain roles or like think they're not capable for them because they're an introvert or an extrovert also. But you just need to realize there's a different aspect and there are a lot of different angles of how one job can be done.
You obviously have a lot of insight and self-awareness around this and how you framed your own qualities to your advantage and to recognize where you have growth opportunities and where you have capacity and capabilities that others might not have. What advice, if any, would you give your younger self?
Well, I mean, since you mentioned like I've got a lot of things and I'm very I mean, I'm very flawed. Like I've got a ton of flaws, and I think
I
all
mean,
human beings are
isn't
flawed. I
everyone?
mean, we're all imperfect. So, and I think I know. I would also it would be very arrogant to say I know a lot of my flaws. I know a good amount of them. I'm pretty sure I'm still missing some. Like pretty sure I'm fighting with others as well. Like fighting with other flaws, and I'm trying to sort of deny that they're there, but I know they're there also. So that's a reality. Um, but I think if I were to give a message to my younger self, it would be two, just two. First one would be stop caring about what other people think, because I think I've allowed that to dictate a lot of my life. I've stopped myself, and I know I've delayed certain things I wanted to be doing in my life for multiple years just because I was too worried about what that person might say, how my friends might react, like what would people say behind my back, or would I look stupid? And I think that's helped me back not just the past few years, but my entire life. So I think that's one thing. Second thing is like failure is completely fine. Like failure is okay. Stop worrying too much about messing things up. Failure is in my opinion, a natural and necessary precursor to success. So failure is good. Failure is needed. You should strive to fail. I mean, you should be aiming for it, and you should also be aiming to embarrass yourself. You should be aiming to make yourself look like a fool at lots of times, because that's how you get to where you believe, and not where you believe, but where you deserve to be. So yeah, those two. Embarrass the hell out of yourself. It's fine. Honestly, people have fish memories anyway; they're going to forget. Um, and just go essentially just fail the hell out of life, and that's going to get you to where you need and deserve to be. Yeah.
That's really good advice. And I'm sure it would have been useful for your younger self, but it's useful for me right now. I think intentionally embarrassing yourself, intentionally putting yourself out there, like, I don't know, creating a podcast, putting it out there, for example.
Yeah,
Um, it's good. It's good.
it's needed.
Mohammed, this was great. Thank you so much for the time. I learned a lot, and I look forward to reading more of your memoir.
I'm going to be following your podcast as well. We're following one another, so I'm looking forward to it.
I know we're following. Well, I wish I spoke Arabic because I can't can't
It's
follow
fine.
your.
It's okay. I have other kinds of English content, so we're good.
Yes, you do. You have a ton of content on Substack, and I think your memoir, by the way, is really insightful, and it's really brave of you to put your story out there, because I had never really thought about the superpowers of being introverted and about the capabilities that get developed by noticing who you are and embracing it and moving forward without having an exact roadmap. So I think it's a great read.
Thank you. I think we're all figuring out life, honestly. I mean, that's what we're doing right now with what we're creating at the moment. So it's another attempt at figuring things out.
I know, aren't we all?